Well, welcome to Manifestation Station channel. Today, we invite you to a journey of transformation that will revolutionize the way you think, act, and feel. We are privileged to delve into the profound insights of Joe Dispenza. Get ready to unlock your potential, break free from limitations, and embrace a new way of being. Join us as we embark on this empowering adventure together. Let's transform how you think, act, and feel. Your current personality has created your current reality, called your life. And what it means is that if you want to create a new reality or a new life, you would have to change your personality. As you begin to think about how you have been thinking, you observe how you've been acting, and you start to pay attention to how you have been feeling. The act of observing those states of mind and body begins to disconnect you from everything known in your life. If you want to create something new in your life, you will have to go beyond your identity or current one. Think of your brain as three brains in one. You literally have three brains that allow you to go from thinking to doing to being. Let's start with the first brain, called the neocortex. The neocortex is where the mind lives. It is bigger and more evolved in humans and dolphins. It is the part of the brain that connects with reality in three dimensions. It is divided into several regions and areas. In the front of the brain, called the frontal lobe, it makes up 40% of your entire brain. It is largest in human beings and is the part that separates us from other species. In the closest species, the gibbons and chimpanzees, the frontal lobe occupies 14 to 17%, in dogs 7%, and in cats 3%. The frontal lobe is known to be the function area, the executive thinking area. Think of the frontal lobe like the head of the brain or the director of the orchestra. It allows you to decide what action to take, to focus your concentration, to invent, speculate, have intention or attention. It is the area of our brain that restricts our reactions, emotional, or begins to speculate new possibilities. Think in the frontal lobe like the place where you live, consciousness, or your creative center. Now, the rest of the brain is also divided into parts. For example, the part at the back of the brain, called the occipital or visual cortex, is where it processes view or orientation. There are strips and areas of the brain that allow you to feel certain things with the body, invoke or begin to initiate motor function or movement, and are areas of the brain that allow you to create long-term memories and begin to distinguish between yourself and what is not yourself. Every brain is geographically mapped, and think about that first brain as the part of the brain that allows you to learn new things and have new experiences. Every time you learn something new, you make new connections in the brain. To learn is to forge new synaptic connections. In some of the latest neuroscience research, they say that an hour of concentrated focus on a concept or idea literally doubles the amount of connections in the brain and produces physical evidence of the result of your interaction with your surroundings. All that philosophy, intellectual information, that theory, that knowledge is stored in that neocortex called brain thinking. Now, the next step is to take that knowledge, that philosophy, and start applying it, customize it, demonstrate it, start that knowledge in some way. And if you do it correctly and you can get your behaviors to match your intentions, that your actions and thoughts are the same as your mind and your body work together, then you will have a new experience. When you are in the middle of an experience, your five senses connect you with the environment. And as that sensory information returns to the brain, jungles of neurons begin to organize into patterns and networks. Experience enriches the philosophical circuits of your brain. And when those neurons begin to form networks, the second brain called the limbic brain, emotional brain, the chemical brain, the mammalian brain begins to make a chemical, and that chemical is called feeling or emotion. In the moment when you feel unlimited, when you feel abundant, when you feel free from any experience, you are chemically teaching your body to understand what your mind understands intellectually. We can say that knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body. At that moment, you embody the truth of that philosophy. And since it comes with new environmental information, you literally start to change your genetic fate by signaling new genes in new ways. It's the limbic brain or chemical brain that begins to make those chemicals so that your body begins to receive instructions, chemicals to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. Furthermore, the limbic brain also has other functions. It is where your brain lives, your nervous system, autonomous. Think about your autonomic nervous system like your autonomic nervous system. That is the part of the brain that subconsciously regulates blood sugar levels, hormonal levels, temperature, breathing, and cardiac rate. It is the part of the brain that gives life automatically. And when you start to make that chemical from an experience, the emotional signature of that experience changes your body in some way. If you could create that experience once, you should be able to recreate it. And if you can recreate any experience again and again, you will begin neurochemically conditioning your mind and your body to function as one. If you have done something so many times that your body knows how to do it, as well as your mind, it will now be something innate in you, something natural, easy, automatic, and familiar. You have done it so many times that you don't have to consciously think about it anymore. It starts to become a program in your subconscious. You know you do it, but you don't consciously know how. And now we could say that you are developing a skill or a habit. In other words, you're starting to master that philosophy and you are moving to a new state of being. When you do it correctly once and for all again, you activate the third brain called the cerebellum. It is the part of the brain responsible for you starting to develop what are called implicit memories or declarative memories, where you have done something so many times that the conscious mind no longer thinks about it. It is who you are. Our job is to transfer knowledge to experience, wisdom from mind to body to soul, of learning it with the mind, applying it with your hands, to know it. I can tell you from memory that common people all over the world are doing uncommon things when following this form. They are almost cured of fatal illnesses, reversing cancer, healing from childhood scars and wounds, creating new jobs, new opportunities, and having mystical experiences that transcend language. And all of them are like you. Let's talk about different ways about how the brain works. First of all, we all hear that when you lose a certain number of neurons in the brain, those neurons never will recover. But there is an emerging field of science called neurogenesis. And neurogenesis literally means growth of new neurons. Our research has found that when people start to learn new things and have new experiences, they just start growing new synaptic connections in the brain. But that flourish with the growth of new neurons as a result of those new experiences and learning, we've even discovered that within 4 days, we begin to activate the same gene that processes the change. So studies carried out at the beginning of the 20th century concluded that there is no growth of new neurons in the brain, for everything remains the same in the body if you remain. Maybe those scientists studied rodents in an immutable environment. if rodents are found in an immutable environment and there is no new stimulation, no new activities, no new experiences, their brains will stay the same. Now, let's talk about you. If you have the same thoughts every day, and in most people, 80 to 90% of your thoughts are the same as the day before, then in your biology, your neural circuits, your neurochemistry, your hormones, and even your genetic expression are the same as you think, act, and feel. In other words, everything remains the same in the body if you stay the same. Then comes the question, is it possible that new thoughts that lead to new decisions, that lead to new behaviors, that create new experiences, that lead to new emotions and new feelings, can inspire new thoughts, begin to change your biology, and you start to notice changes? It means so much in the brain as in our body. Research proves that when you change everything around you, everything changes. The concept of coherence. Think of coherence as an order, rhythm, or synchronization. The people who live daily with stress hormones, and for most humans that means 70% of the time. And when you are living in stress, you are living in survival. And when you perceive any threat in your environment, where you perceive a danger and you have the perception that something could get worse, the primitive nervous system, the fight or flight nervous system, is activated. When you are stressed, are you trying to control or predict an outcome? People who live threatened by these emergency chemicals change very quickly. They shift their attention from one person in their life to another, to something, somewhere, to meetings, to places they have to go. And each of those elements known in their external environment are neurological networks that are reflected in your brain under the urgency and excitement of stress hormones. We begin to change our attention from one person to another, activating those individual circuits. And like a storm electric in the clouds, the brain begins to shoot in a very disorderly, incoherent manner. And when the brain is incoherent, you are incoherent. When the brain doesn't work well, you don't function well. And it is that state in which starts making the brain work like a house divided against itself. The different compartments of the brain no longer synchronize. We find the formula to teach people to create more order and more coherence in their brain. When done correctly, without the help of drugs, medications, or external therapies. If only PR, that formula, can start to make your brain work better. When your brain works properly, you start to see the world in a very different way. Coherence is when the brain begins to unify those different communities of neurons that have ever subdivided. You suddenly perceive that the frontal brain begins to resonate and swing with the back of the brain. You notice that the right side of the brain begins to synchronize with the left side, and the brain begins to function in a more holistic state that is synchronized. In the brain, links form, and suddenly you begin to feel more complete. Likewise, when someone lives with stress hormones, there are only 3 things that the nervous system wants to do. Primitive survival instincts kick in, such as run, fight, or hide. Because societal norms say you can't fight. You can only run or hide. Many times people step on the accelerator because the emergency system tells them to act. But they're in a business meeting, in a car with their children, talking on the phone with someone, and it's the stress hormones that begin to activate the heart to run, because the blood in that state needs to be pumped to the limbs. But when you step on the accelerator and at the same time step on the brake, the heart begins to function incoherently. And when your heart works incoherently, you stop trusting yourself. Suddenly the heart begins to send very inconsistent messages to the brain. And the person begins to suffer from diseases or imbalances. When teaching people how to create cardiac coherence and brain synchronization, coherence between your heart and your brain, significant changes are seen not only in your health, but also in your life. In the same way, when you create cerebral and cardiac coherence, there is more energy going to the brain. And that energy is causing the brain to function with greater knowledge or a higher level of consciousness. And in this series, I want to show you how much energy the brain can have when you start moving those states. It's not just a small change in energy, but a significant change that happens regardless of diet changes or exercises alone. By using thought alone, you can create more order and communication between your heart and your brain. When you do this, you have more energy in the brain to develop your life, to be more present, to make better decisions, and to think beyond the limitations or conditions of your environment. So for people to make significant changes in their lives, they have to go beyond their memory of themselves. Just as they do with their personality. Create your reality, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Your current personality has created the current reality called your life. Which means that if you want to create a new reality or a new life, you would have to change your current personality. As you start to think about how you have been thinking, look at how you've been acting, and you start paying attention to how you've been feeling, the act of observing those states of mind and body begins to disconnect you from everything known in your life. If you want to create something new in your life, you will have to go beyond your identity or current personality. And when you start to apply this formula, you will begin to see significant changes, not only within you, but in the world around you. We have carried out an exhaustive investigation to show that people can do this in a short time. We commissioned a university in Australia on the Gold Coast, Bond University, to analyze thousands of images of our brains. They discovered that people whose brains had been analyzed were able to achieve that feat in 4 minutes and 15 seconds. In other words, they developed the ability to go beyond their mind's analysis of their personality to create. We have also done something new, measurements, to show that 80% of the people whose brains had a change for the better, more than 90% of your brain, with just applying this formula. I can also tell you a study on the brain in the process of change and transformation, that when you analyze your life within some disturbing emotion, it will worsen your brain every time you do it. Think about this. Emotions are a record of the past. They are the end product of past experiences. And if you live your life with a known emotion, and that emotion is driven by hormones from stress, whenever you are thinking within that emotion, we could say that you are thinking about the past. The solution to your problems is not thinking within that emotion. It is to go beyond yourself and start going beyond the emotion. And when you do, you go beyond your past, and now you are no longer seeing your future or yourself through the lens of the past. The side effect is that you start to see possibilities you never saw before. Then teach the people to go beyond themselves, cease normal analytical processes, how to change, and show them another way. Doing so begins to produce meaningful and measurable changes in their lives. In other words, it will take you a long time to change your personality. Changing your personality takes a long time. Changing the ego takes a lot of time. For some, a subconscious program or some habit is changed to itself, but the formula that we teach about how to go beyond yourself allows them to be so aware that they are no longer immersed in the personality of another person. And that is the first step to change how you are changing this information and the way that we see the world when we move from think to act to do. Can I be here and tell you that when people begin to learn the appropriate information, and when you combine quantum physics with a little neuroscience, with a little psychoneurological immunology of epigenetics, all those sciences point towards the possibility of tailoring, that people begin to learn information and they can explain that to you. Information to someone, they begin to install neurological hardware on your brain in preparation for an experience. Makes your brain shoot in new sequences, new patterns, combinations. Every time you make your brain work differently, you are changing your mind. And the more you understand what you are doing and why, what are you making, it much easier will be. And the antithesis is also true. If you can't explain the information, no is wired into your brain. The purpose of the process of explanation as we add new connections in the tapestry three-dimensional of our gray matter is that we do it because we want to install those circuits so that nothing remains susceptible to conjecture, superstition, to dogma. When people understand exactly what is doing and why, they assign more meaning, they put more intention, and get better results. Once again, understand that information from an intellectual and theoretical understanding in their thinking, neocortex. If they can set the conditions in the environment, give them proper instructions, and make your behaviors match with your intentions and your actions equal to your thoughts, when they get your mind and your body work together, have some kind of transformation. What is the effect secondary to this process? We are seeing ordinary people around the world doing unusual things, in a sense, becoming humans supernatural. I'm talking about healing of chronic diseases from cancer, even diabetes, Parkinson's disease, lupus, spinal cord injuries, traumatic brain injuries, anxiety, depression, including genetic disorders, rare ones for which medical science has got the solution. When they arrive at that point, they have become human, supernatural. And what does that mean? That they are bigger, that their body's larger than conditions in their environment and are now on a completely timeline new, and as a result, they not only change them, but also change their lives.